Welcome back to another episode of the CS Podcast. I am your host, Chris Shanafelt, presented by NFL Draft Bible, NFLDraftBible.com. It's been a while since we've last had an episode here on the CS Podcast. Been doing a lot of work for NFL Draft Bible, NFLDraftBible.com, and the NFL Draft Bible's Player Spotlight Show. But here we are back at it with the CS Podcast. Again, I am your host, Chris Shanafelt, and we have a pretty stud-filled show today as we have George Bremer from the Herald Bulletin out in Indianapolis. He covers the Indianapolis Colts joining us, and we also have Natrell Jamerson, 2018 NFL Draft Prospect safety out of Wisconsin, was the defensive MVP at the East-West Shrine game a couple of weeks ago in St. Petersburg, Florida. We'll talk to Jamerson in a little bit, but right now we do have George Bremer on the line. Again, he covers the Indianapolis Colts for the Herald Bulletin. You can follow him on Twitter at GM Bremer. That's GMBREMER, and he does some great work. So be sure you go ahead and check him out. George, how's everything going?
Good. It's obviously been a pretty crazy couple of days here. Unlike anything I've seen around this team, and that's saying something with this group because it's never boring here. It seems like there's always something going on, but I don't think I've seen anything quite like the last 48 hours.
Well, let's go ahead and jump right into it because there has been a lot of news surrounding the Indianapolis Colts and obviously a lot with the head coaching vacancy. It seemed like a couple of weeks ago the Indianapolis Colts came to terms with the offensive coordinator of the New England Patriots, former Denver Broncos head coach Josh McDaniels, and then last second Tuesday evening he alerts Chris Ballard, the Indianapolis Colts general manager, that he's had second thoughts, he had cold feet, and that he's going to stick in New England to be their offensive coordinator. New England, the owner, Robert Kraft, spoke to him and upped his pay and kind of talked a little bit about the future with McDaniels, you got to think. And again, McDaniels alerts Chris Ballard Tuesday evening after the Indianapolis Colts already announced that they would have an introductory press conference for McDaniels Wednesday morning. The Colts did still hold a press conference yesterday, but it was not to introduce Josh McDaniels as the team's new head coach. It was instead to explain all of what happened Tuesday evening, the fallout with McDaniels. And George, you mentioned it. I mean, you haven't seen anything like this before. The Bears seen something similar back in 1999 with Dave McGinnis. All signs pointed to the Bears hiring him, and he was even here in Chicago, but left O'Hare Airport, met with the media and kind of explained the fallout there. But here we have it again, another fallout, another NFL team thinking they have found their new head coach, and at the last second, it just does not come together. Your overall thoughts on all this?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here, obviously, and I think we're still kind of sorting through the aftermath here, and probably will be, honestly, for a while. It's going to affect, I think, the draft preparation. It's going to affect free agency. I don't see how it doesn't. It's going to take some time for whoever it is that ultimately gets this job to come in and prove that he can be a leader in the locker room and prove to the players that he's got the backing of ownership, and everyone's going to know he was a second choice. Of course, that hasn't really been a problem in the past. I mean, Doug Peterson was the Eagles' second choice, and I think that turned out pretty well for Philadelphia. So, it's something that franchises can definitely overcome. But it's an added obstacle in an offseason that already was going to be busy and hectic for this team. They've got a little over $80 million in the salary cap room as free agency gets started. They've got the number 3 pick overall in the draft, obviously. And then all the things that are going on with Andrew Luck. So even before all this happened with Josh McDaniels, we knew this was going to be a really busy, a really crazy offseason. And now you've kind of turned everything on its head and restarted the coaching search from scratch. I thought Chris Ballard did a really good job yesterday in the press conference of handling the situation, calming some nerves, kind of, at least making it look like the sky's not falling here in Indianapolis. Which unfortunately he's had a lot of experience with. There's been a lot of crisis since he's been here, a lot of different things that have cropped up that he's had to get in front of the media and spread some bad news and kind of spin it and make everybody try to feel as good about it as possible. And I thought he did as good a job as he ever has yesterday.
Chris Ballard, he ended the press conference by saying the rivalry is back on. And a lot of people kind of poked around with it. Like you said, I also was a fan of how he carried himself and explained the situation and what's going to happen next with the Indianapolis Colts head coach vacancy and what's going to go on next. But he did end by saying the rivalry is back on, and a lot of people had some fun with that because as of lately, if you look at the past games, it hasn't been much of a rivalry. What'd you think about him ending the press conference with that remark?
I think it was sort of a mission statement. I mean, that's the way that I read it. I think it was sort of him, not so much calling his shot, but saying, "Hey, look, this is where we're trying to go." And he had mentioned earlier about the pride in the city and about getting the team back to where they feel like they should be. And I think that was all part and parcel. I think that was another component of that, just saying, "Look, we're going to try to make this a rivalry again." You know, he wants to get the Colts back to a point where there is a rivalry because there absolutely has not been for about 5 or 6 years now. You know, it's been a good long while since Indianapolis has been remotely competitive with New England on the field. And I think this was another example of Ballard's confidence. He really feels like he's got a system in place, he's got a plan in place, and he's going to put those pieces together. And he believes the end result is that the Colts will be back and be competitive in this league. And for him to say that, you know, a day after Josh McDaniels backed out and blew some of those blueprints up, it just shows you how unflappable the guy is. And I think right now, that's the biggest thing this organization has. I think head coaches that come in the next few days and interview, they're not going to find a franchise in panic that's scrambling and, you know, trying to find a new way and uncertain of what to do. They're going to find a guy with a plan in place who's calm, who's still confident in what he's doing and confident in what they're going to do moving forward. I think that's going to give those head coaches a little bit better feeling about what they might be getting into if they decide to join up.
What is it that you think Chris Ballard is going to be looking in for these next head coach interviews? I mean, it looks like Eagles offensive coordinator Frank Reich, Saints assistant head coach Dan Campbell are in line for interviews for this job. I think I've even seen the name Leslie Frazier float around, who's currently the defensive coordinator for the Buffalo Bills. And as you said, I mean, they're kind of going to be looked at as the second guy for this job, you know, not their number one guy. How much of an impact do you think as well, the coaches that McDaniels have already brought in and, you know, they've already been signed to a contract. You know, I believe Ballard himself even said, you know, that they're going to stay there in Indianapolis. You know, I think there's 3 coaches under contract that McDaniels intended on joining in Indianapolis over there. And obviously that's not going to happen. Do you think having coaches already in place with this new vacancy, do you think that could affect some of the guys that may want to go there?
It could. Yeah, I think there's a lot of baggage with this job now. All of a sudden, you still have questions about Andrew Luck and what his situation is, and I'm sure that's going to have an effect on each of these candidates. And you've got to be willing to take on 3 coaches right now. Matt Eberflus is here; he's going to be the defensive coordinator, no matter who the head coach is. Mike Ferris here; he's going to be the defensive line coach, no matter who the head coach is. And Dave DiGuglielmo is here. He's going to be the offensive line coach, no matter who the head coach is. So I think there's pluses and minuses to that. Obviously, any head coach would love to get his own guys and surround himself with staff that's handpicked. But at the same time, it's February 8th today, February 9th. I've lost track of time already. And whoever this coach is going to be behind the 8 ball a little bit in assembling a staff anyway. So there may be some part of it, too, that there is some bit of relief that there's 3 chairs already filled, and you know there's that much less to do when you finally get in and get on the job. As far as the kind of guy they're looking for, I think it's interesting. The 3 candidates that we know of right now, whether or not there'll be any more added, we'll probably hear about that here in the next few hours and in the next day or so. But they couldn't be really much more different. They're 3 very unique candidates. I feel like in a lot of ways, Leslie Frazier is sort of the comfort food option here. I mean, he's a guy who has been a head coach before. He's been in Indianapolis before. He was here when they won the Super Bowl. He's obviously from the defensive side of things, but he's very in line with what Tony Dungy did defensively. It sounds like Matt Eberflus has that same kind of philosophy, so there would be some symmetry there between him and the defensive coordinator. But he's also known around the league as a guy that commands respect. I think he'd be a calming presence. He'd be a guy that you could bring in and could probably get things rolling back to a somewhat normal state pretty quickly. So like I said, I feel like he's kind of the comfort option. Dan Campbell to me is on the other end of the spectrum. He had a 12-game stint as an interim coach in Miami, but a lot of people don't really know who he is. He's a former player as well. So is Frazier, so is Frank Reich. All three of them former players in the NFL. But Campbell is a real big energy guy. You know, from what I've been able to glean, he sounds like he's one of these guys that would come in and fire things up, and he probably would kind of be part of that ethos from the rivalry is back on. He seems like a guy who would embrace that kind of thinking and would come in with a chip on his shoulder and embrace the idea that he's the second choice and kind of use that a little bit. Hey, nobody wanted me, and here I am, and I'm gonna take it and run with it. So I think he'd be interesting from that angle. He's a tight ends coach down there in New Orleans, so I think there's some of the toughness that Chris Ballard always talks about there. And then with Frank Reich, you've got a guy who obviously just helped win a Super Bowl with Nick Foles as the quarterback. He's been the offensive coordinator there now for a couple of years, but he doesn't call the plays, so I'm sure that'll be interesting. But he's got a very similar resume, a very similar background to Doug Peterson, who he's obviously working for now, a backup quarterback in the league for a long time, who would be finally getting his shot. It'd be his first shot as head coach, and he has ties to Indianapolis as well. He was here and was part of the staff on the second Super Bowl team here that lost to the Saints. So some guys that they're obviously familiar with in this group, but I think a lot of different approaches. Some of them, you know, all three at different levels of experience. Dan Campbell's still pretty new in his career. Even though Reich's never been a head coach, he's been around for about a decade. He's got a decent amount of experience. And then Leslie Frazier, obviously a former head coach and a longtime coordinator. So they're kind of all over the place. There's some offensive guys. There's a defensive guy. I think the search is wide open again, just as it was when they went in and to the process that led to Josh McDaniels in the first place.
And hey, I mean, a couple years back, there was a number of different publications out there that ranked Doug Peterson the year he was hired as the Eagles head coach. As I believe there's 7 openings, he was ranked as the 7th best hire. So it doesn't really matter when or when you're hired, but what you do when you do officially get hired as the team's new head coach. I know a lot of people are kind of down right now on the Colts and their situation, but hey, I mean, we've seen what Philadelphia has been able to do in just a couple of years now. Again, we're chatting with George Bremer of the Herald Bulletin out in Indianapolis. He's a beat writer for the Indianapolis Colts, and obviously a lot depends on the health of Andrew Luck, George. You know, what do you have on that? And, you know, I mean, obviously this job looks a whole lot different if Andrew Luck is your starting quarterback or if Jacoby Brissett is your starting quarterback.
I think you saw that just on the field last year. And you know, I don't want to take anything away from Brissett because I think he did a really good job in the situation that he was thrust into, showing up really the Saturday before the regular season started, or practice for the regular season started, and starting in week 2 and going on to start 15 games, finding a way to win 4 of them. You know, he did a lot for this franchise, and I think there's a lot of people in that building that really like Brissett, like what he could do going forward, but he's obviously not Andrew Luck. He's obviously not able to change games the way Andrew Luck can. And, you know, one of the big questions with Luck is, will Andrew Luck be Andrew Luck again? It's not just, is he healthy and will he be able to go? It's, what will he look like? You know, what will he be able to do? How much has a year away from the game affected him? And right now, there's no way to answer any of those questions. And I think there's a lot of frustration here in the fan base, obviously. People want more direct answers. It feels like right now, Andrew Luck's the ultimate Rorschach test. You know, everybody kind of sees what they want to see in each update that we get. And so you'll have the same words coming from Chris Ballard and people with wildly different evaluations of what it all means. I think part of the issue on Ballard's part is there isn't any certainty. He can't say anything with certainty right now because there simply isn't any certainty. The shoulder is still going through a process. It's been more than a year. That's obviously concerning. The fact that he's still not throwing a football is obviously concerning, but we know he's out in California right now. He's working with Tom House, who obviously has worked with Tom Brady. He's working on his throwing motion. He's working on his arm speed. They're working their way up. It's a process that they've established to get him into a shape where he's going to throw a football. And from what we've heard and from what he had said earlier in December, the plan is to have him ready to be on the field when OTAs start. And that'll be really the first checkpoint. Is he out there? Is he doing everything his teammates are doing? And that's probably going to be, they'll start in early April, but they won't do field work until probably later that month. That's really going to be, I think, the first time we get any kind of idea. But honestly, until he starts throwing a football regularly, is on a regular throwing regimen, and you see how that shoulder holds up, whether the pain comes back, whether he still feels okay, I don't think anybody can say with any kind of certainty where he's at, and that's hanging over the whole franchise. Even more than who the head coach is going to be, it's even more important to find out whether or not Andrew Luck's going to be the quarterback for the Colts next year, and whether or not he's going to be able to play at the level that he did before the injury.
Of course, the NFL Scouting Combine, it's held there in Indianapolis every year. Indianapolis is a great host city for that. It's in Lucas Oil Stadium. What do you think, or what direction should the Indianapolis Colts go with that number 3 overall pick?
Yeah, there's a lot of talk about Bradley Chubb, and that makes a lot of sense. It sounds like they're going to put an emphasis on speed with this defense. They want a quick, athletic defense. And they've got a lot of that on the roster now. That's one thing that Chris Ballard was able to do in his first season, add a whole lot of youth, a whole lot of athleticism to that defense. They still need some work to do. They're going to need at least one corner, maybe even more than that. They really need to overhaul the linebacker group, especially moving to a 4-3. I don't know if they have anybody right now that you could pencil in and feel very confident about as a starting 4-3 linebacker. But I think the biggest need on defense for this team is pass rush. It hasn't been there at all the last 2 seasons. It was a big part of the reason why they couldn't finish out games last year. And you go back through and you see 4-12, and it says one story, and it's definitely you are who you are in this league. But if you watch the games, how many times they had a lead at halftime, they had a lead going into the fourth quarter, and they weren't able to finish these teams out. A lot of that was due to the fact that they couldn't get any pressure on opposing quarterbacks. So I think you can bring in Bradley Chubb, and you can change kind of the mindset of this defense, get somebody who can keep offensive coordinators up at night worrying about how to stop him, and that'll be a big step forward for this team. But, I've heard Saquon Barkley's name thrown around out there. It'll be interesting. Some people think he's the best player in this draft. I think Quentin Nelson's going to be somebody who's got to be on the Colts' radar because of the problems that they've had with the offensive line. And even a guy like Minkah Fitzpatrick, I think, Ballard has shown he will take the best available player, and he'll worry about what he's going to do with him once he gets him in the building. So I think there's a lot of options. I think they may trade back. If somebody wants to come up and get a quarterback there, I'm sure that Ballard will be willing to listen. That's another part of this offseason that's so interesting here in Indianapolis, and that another reason why they need to kind of move as quickly as possible with this coaching search, get everybody on board, and start kind of forming up some more concrete plans for what they want to do in the draft.
Yeah, again, we're only about 3 weeks, give or take, from the NFL Scouting Combine. And, George, to circle back to the head coaching vacancy, was Josh McDaniels their first choice? There's been a lot of rumors as to saying, that was really Jim Irsay's first choice. That was his go-to guy, and Chris Ballard wasn't 100% all in on that. Is that true? And, there's a radio host, David Kaplan here in Chicago, when the Bears hired Matt Nagy to be their new head coach, he reported that the Colts offered him their job as well, and he chose the Bears job over the Indianapolis Colts head coaching job. Did you hear anything about that? And again, was McDaniels was he Ballard's number one guy when it came to this head coaching vacancy?
Yeah, it's always hard to know for sure in these situations for so many reasons. You're always going to hear a lot of different reports and a lot of different opinions. I've been told that the Colts didn't offer the job to anybody else. My understanding is that Josh McDaniels was the number one choice. He was the guy that they identified pretty early in this process, and that he was the one that they were working with. In fact, that's part of why Ballard mentioned at the press conference, guys like Frank Reich and Dan Campbell were in the initial group of people that they wanted to interview. But in that first week, you can only fit so many people in. They got to prioritize who they wanted there. And by the time that they were able to come back and circle back to where they could have talked to Campbell again or to Frank Reich again, they had already made their mind up that McDaniels was their guy, and so they didn't go forward with those interviews. And that's why Reich and Campbell are being brought in now. My understanding is that Ballard spent more than a year building a relationship with Josh McDaniels, that he worked very hard towards researching him and finding out what he needed to know about, having a comfort level with him as the head coach. And so I feel very much like this was Chris Ballard's decision. This was the guy that he wanted. And I think in a lot of ways he got burned. He spent all that time and he felt like he was in a good place. And in the end, McDaniels decided that he would rather stay in New England after all that work and all that time was put in.
Well, as Chris Ballard said in yesterday's press conference, George, just because you're not the first choice doesn't mean you're the best choice. So that'll be an interesting thing to keep an eye on, the Colts head coaching vacancy. Before we let you go, George, the Colts, they were in the news as well. Super Bowl Sunday, unfortunately, linebacker Edwin Jackson lost his life to a drunken driver earlier in the week. If you can, I mean, what kind of experiences have you had with Edwin Jackson, if any, and what was the feel around Indianapolis after this news came out?
Yeah, that was a huge loss. I was absolutely stunned Sunday. I'm kind of just sitting around. It's Super Bowl Sunday. You're just getting ready for the game. You think it's going to be kind of an easy day, and you sort of just scrolling through the Twitter account to see what's going on. And when that came across, it was crushing. And I think it was that way for anybody who came across Edwin Jackson at any level. The media, the players, the coaches, the people who work in the building over there. He was such a bright, shining guy, and one of the people in the locker room who really rose people's spirits, a big inspirational guy. We used to laugh at his first season with the Colts. He rose to being a starter. He came out of nowhere, really. We got him one day after one of the really tough losses. That was the 8-8 year when they were alternating every week. And he came into the media room, and really no one had talked to him much at all at that point. Because he really hadn't been somebody that you would seek out, but he was starting to become a story, and he gave this almost pep talk. And I remember somebody asking him about what they had to do to get better, and he almost sounded like a Southern preacher for a while. He had so much spirit and so much fire, and just so much passion about what he believed this team could do and where they were going. And even last year after he got injured, you'd see him in the locker room. He'd be on crutches, but he always had a smile. He always had a kind word for everybody. One of the most positive, passionate guys that I've been around in this league, and to see his life end in such a unnecessary fashion, it's just devastating. And I think it's something that the whole franchise, the whole city is still feeling. That's going to last with this team for a long time. Edwin Jackson was a really great guy to be around, a really great force in that locker room, and it's a huge loss for everybody who's been associated with the team.
Yeah, again, an undrafted free agent in 2015 out of Georgia Southern, signed with the Arizona Cardinals, didn't make it through their final cuts, and then the Colts picked him up on the practice squad, and in 2016 he played in all 16 games, 8 starts, 66 tackles, 2 sacks, and unfortunately was placed on injured reserve just before the start of this past regular season, but again, gone way too soon, and it's unfortunate, to say the very least. Again, hearing this news on Super Bowl Sunday. George, really appreciate you taking the time. As always, it's great to chat with you. Whenever we need a pulse on the Indianapolis Colts, we go to you, George Bremer of the Herald Bulletin out in Indianapolis. Thanks a lot, George.
No problem. Thanks a lot. Anytime.
All right, there he goes. George Bremer, again, of the of the Herald Bulletin, covering the Indianapolis Colts, their beat writer, and again, a lot to digest there. We'll start off with kind of covering the whole Josh McDaniels fiasco, talked a lot about that, and just to give my opinion on that, I mean, I do not believe Josh McDaniels went about this the right way. Yeah, you could have a change of heart, but you're already bringing in other coaches. You've got 3 of them already signed to the team. They left their job to join you in Indianapolis, and 3 of them are already locked under contract. And Chris Ballard has already announced that they're not going anywhere. They're not going to give them the raw end of the deal because Josh McDaniels decided to back out of this position. So the new head coach is going to have to decide, do I want to take this job, one, even though the health of Andrew Luck, it's up for grabs. I mean, nobody really knows what's going on there. You could potentially have Jacoby Brissett as your starting quarterback week 1. Now, there are reports saying Andrew Luck, he's throwing the football, and all signs point to him being the week 1 starter for Indianapolis, but there's no guarantees on that. There's also reports disputing that, saying that he may just have to have another surgery on that throwing shoulder of his. So you don't really know what you're getting out of the quarterback position. It could be very good with a healthy Andrew Luck, or it could be I don't want to down talk Jacoby Brissett, but he's no Andrew Luck. He's no top quarterback in the league, and I don't think he's going to ever be one. Now, he could be a decent backup quarterback that, I mean, again, the Colts brought him in, a couple of days before the regular season started, and, to start the season, he didn't look too bad, but, again, 4-12, they ended the regular season, and, again, the number 3 overall pick. So again, needless to say, I mean, and it's not all on Jacoby Brissett. I mean, you heard George say, there's a lot to be focused on the defense and the defensive line. That's a spot that they could address in the draft, and I think Bradley Chubb would be a great fit for the Indianapolis Colts. I mean, there are a lot of holes on this team. So if you're a guy that's interviewing for this head coaching job, you got to take that into account. You don't really know who your starting quarterback is going to be come week 1, and you're going to have to come in with a few guys already under contract on your coaching staff, which a lot of guys do not really take fond of. I mean, they are not very fond of already joining a team where you're not able to compile your own coaching staff. So, again, Josh McDaniels, he's 41 years old. He's coaching with the best quarterback of all time. He's coaching under the best coach of all time in Bill Belichick. He has plenty of time. He's going to be in the league for a very long time. Is he ever going to, or will he never get another head coaching opportunity? I doubt it. I think he will definitely get another opportunity, whether it's in New England. When Bill Belichick decides to call it a career, and a lot of people are speculating in that meeting with Robert Kraft, the Patriots owner, maybe something went on where so it was a meeting between Robert Kraft, the owner of the New England Patriots, Josh McDaniels, and Bill Belichick's son, one of them that is on the coaching staff as well. And a lot of people are speculating maybe Robert Kraft, not only did he up his pay, but maybe he kind of guaranteed, or I wouldn't say guarantee, but maybe he said, hey, Belichick only has a couple more years, a few more years at best, maybe. I think Belichick's been on record saying he doesn't want to be coaching into his 70s. So this job is going to be opening up relatively soon. I know you can't really guarantee anything, 3, 4, 5 years down the road, but it seems like Robert Kraft, he really wanted Josh McDaniels to stay in New England, a great offensive mind, a younger coach, again, has plenty left in the tank, and he could be Bill Belichick's successor. Nothing in the works, at least reported as of yet, but that could be a possibility. If not, if he doesn't ever get an opportunity to be the head coach of the New England Patriots, I'm sure an NFL team will look past this eventually. And again, he's only 41 years old. If he continues to coach the way he does with Tom Brady, and then when Tom Brady retires, there will be teams knocking on his door, blowing up his cell phone, wanting them to be the head coach of their organization. Again, you guys are tuned into the CS Podcast. I am your host, Chris Shanafelt. We just got off the phone lines with George Bremer of the Herald Bulletin. Coming up in a half hour, we will be joined by Natrell Jamerson, safety, 2018 NFL draft prospect out of Wisconsin, the Wisconsin Badgers. He was the defensive MVP at the East-West Shrine game a couple of weeks back in St. Petersburg, Florida. With some of the best competition in all the country. He stood out. He won the game's defensive MVP. He had a pick six in that game. Very exciting. I was there in person, and he had a great week. And this is a guy that's very talented, very versatile. One of the top safeties in the class, not to mention. So looking forward to chatting with him. And with that said, we're going to take a quick break. About a 2-minute break. When I return, I'm going to talk about some more things going on around the NFL. It's also the NBA trade deadline come 3 o'clock, I believe, 3 o'clock Eastern time. So there's already been some deals being made in the NBA. The Bulls made a deal. The Cavaliers just made a pretty big deal, so I'll try and touch on that in a little bit as well. Again, you guys are tuned into the CS Podcast. I am your host, Chris Shanafelt. Stay tuned. All right, welcome back. CS Podcast. I am your host, Chris Shanafelt, presented by NFLDraftBible.com. Bringing you the names that you need to know first since 2002. Visit the NFL Draft Bible. It's been in business since 2002. Talking all kinds of college football, whether it's FBS, Division I, Division I FCS, Division II, D3. Just had an NAIA a couple NAIA guys on the last couple of weeks in Darius Price, small school safety out of Siena Heights University, and running back out of Morningside College, Bubba Jenkins. So those are two guys that are legit NFL draft prospects that, again, bring you the names that you need to know first since 2002. The NFL Draft Bible. These are two guys that have joined our show. They've been on the radar for quite a while. And, again, if you want to know information on prospects from the top schools, some of the top prospects in the country, we had Joe Everett out at the Senior Bowl, or some of the smaller school prospects that are going to be day 2, day 3, even undrafted guys that can make an impact, then, again, be sure to check out the NFL Draft Bible, because the content there is not only reliable, but it is very, very good. And again, whether it's the top guys or not the top guys, you get it all at the NFL Draft Bible. So check it out, NFLDraftBible.com. Check out, follow the Twitter account as well, at NFL Draft Bible. You guys can follow me at Chris Shanafelt. My name is spelled there at the top right of the screen. Right now I got ESPN on the television screen on mute. We got the Philadelphia Eagles parade going on, expecting 2 million people there in Philadelphia for this parade. You got the buses going down on Broad Street. Doug Peterson, head coach, was just walking up and down the street with the people, letting them touch and see the Lombardi Trophy. That was very cool to see. Jason Kelsey is wearing some type of tuxedo, some type of suit that he looks great. He's very well prepared for a parade, a celebration parade, and you could tell by just looking at him. And congratulations to those guys. A former player of our Player Spotlight show, I was talking about the NFL Draft Bible and how we cover not only some of the top prospects in the country, but some of the smaller school, not on the radar prospects as well. And a couple years ago, we had Kamu Grugier-Hill, a guy that played linebacker at Eastern Illinois, was looked at as probably a defensive back in the pros, as he's a little bit undersized. He was actually had a stout pro day at Northwestern, and the New England Patriots pulled the trigger, drafted him in the 6th round of the NFL draft, and since then he had a stellar, or maybe I shouldn't say stellar, because he did ultimately get released from the Patriots, but he really stood out in preseason, in training camp, and a lot of people were kind of surprised to see that he didn't make the final cuts there in New England. And Belichick has been on record saying, they're hoping to get him back on the practice squad, but after he was released from New England, his rookie year, he was picked up off waivers right away by the Philadelphia Eagles, and has not looked back since. He's been on the active roster since he was picked up off waivers, and has been one of the top special teams players in the NFL as well. I believe he was third in the league in special team tackles. So, or certainly up there in the top 5. And not only was he a heck of a guy to being able to get downfield and tackle the ball carrier on special teams, but this is a guy that the Philadelphia Eagles kicker Jake Elliott went down one game with an injury, I believe against the New York Giants. And I think it may have been a primetime game. I'm not 100% on that, but it was against the New York Giants. I'm pretty sure. I know it was a division game. Giants or Cowboys, but I'm thinking it's the Giants. But anyways, Jake Elliott goes out with an injury, and they don't have a replacement kicker. They don't have an extra kicker on the roster. Rarely do teams hold an extra kicker on the roster. So they actually called up Grugier-Hill, and he his first practice kick didn't go in the net. It actually went into the crowd. He did end up hitting no, I don't think he even attempted a field goal or an extra point, but he actually kicked the ball on kickoff a couple times, and I think he even had a touchback or two. So, one of the top special team guys in the league. He had a blocked kick as well. So, congrats to Kamu Grugier-Hill, Eastern Illinois alum, former guest of the show, and now, as I mentioned, on the television screen here on ESPN, celebrating the Philadelphia Eagles' first Super Bowl victory in franchise history. For those that follow me on Twitter or even Facebook, I'll share the link to that Player Spotlight interview with Grugier-Hill shortly after this show, and kind of give you guys a reminder where you can check it out at. And it was actually, I believe, my most viewed interview that season, that draft season, was with Grugier-Hill. So again, congrats to him. Congrats to the city of Philadelphia on celebrating their very first Super Bowl victory in franchise history. Again, over 2 million people, I believe, are expected to be in attendance there in Philadelphia to celebrate this Super Bowl. Moving on to some other news in the NFL. Josh McDaniels, obviously, we talked about how he backed out of the Colts coach job. He was the offensive coordinator in New England, and still is, obviously. The defensive coordinator in New England, Matt Patricia, did not back out of his commitment, and he is the new head coach of the Detroit Lions. And actually already brought in a defense coordinator to join that squad as well, and Paul Pasqualini, the defensive line coach, I believe he was at Boston College. He's had a few other stops, both in college and in the league as well. I know he's been here in Chicago with the Chicago Bears as their defensive line coach. He's been with UConn as either their D-line coach or defensive coordinator, one of the two. So he's been around. He's bounced around. He's bounced around in a couple different places in both college and the pros. So Matt Patricia already has his guy at defensive coordinator there in Detroit. Something we didn't mention when talking about the whole Josh McDaniels fiasco is his agent actually ended up dropping him. So that was an interesting outcome in seeing how all that transpired. His agent ended up dropping him, and it's interesting because a lot of people felt that, okay, yeah, Josh McDaniels probably didn't do the right thing here, but the agent of Josh McDaniels, and I swear I just had his name up, Bob Lamont was the agent of Josh McDaniels. Lamont got rid of McDaniels after all this went down. was not with it. Was not with the way McDaniels ended up carrying on with business, and Lamont is actually the same agent who also represents John Gruden and Jack Del Rio. Well, you might be asking yourself, okay, why does that matter? I'm sure those aren't the only coaches that Lamont represents. He probably represents some more. Well, it matters because Bob Lamont, the agent of Gruden and Del Rio, he was negotiating with the Oakland Raiders for John Gruden to be their new head coach, while Jack Del Rio was still coaching the Oakland Raiders. So Del Rio, he still had the job. He was actually still coaching games for the Oakland Raiders while his own agent was negotiating a deal for John Gruden to become the highest paid coach in NFL history, and overtook his job there, which, you might say to yourself, that's some dirty business by Bob Lamont as well. So it is, I don't think Lamont did the greatest thing in that situation with Oakland, or I should say, soon to be the Las Vegas Raiders, but they're still in Oakland for now. But I don't blame him here in getting rid of Josh McDaniels after seeing what he did to the Indianapolis Colts and that organization and that coaching staff. Again, McDaniels brought 3 guys onto the coaching staff, and they already signed their deals. They already signed their contracts. And last second, after the Colts already announced that Josh McDaniels will be the team's new head coach, last second he gives Chris Ballard a phone call and backs out of the deal. So I do not blame Bob Lamont for getting rid of Josh McDaniels as a client. And again, McDaniels, he's staying in New England to be the Patriots, or staying in New England to continue being the New England Patriots offensive coordinator. We'll see if there's maybe a successor role that was negotiated there in that meeting he had with Robert Kraft and one of Belichick's sons, who's also on the coaching staff, but nothing certain as of yet. So keep an eye out on what happens with the Indianapolis Colts head coaching gig, who becomes their next guy. Let's see, some other things going on in the NFL. DJ Moore and I, on our weekly show, the Chris and DJ show, we talked a lot about the Alex Smith trade to the Washington Redskins. And now we are hearing that the Chiefs CEO did not want to trade Alex Smith to the Denver Broncos. And that makes a lot of sense, seeing as the Broncos have a big hole to fill there at quarterback. Trevor Siemian, Paxton Lynch are their guys there so far as of yet. You got to think at some point in the draft they pull the trigger on a quarterback. Maybe they're able to land Kirk Cousins. But to hear that the Kansas City Chiefs did not want to trade him to Denver was not surprising at all. You're playing in the same division. You know that if Denver gets a quarterback, a reliable, at least decent quarterback, with the defense that they have there still, and even some of the offensive players they have there in Denver, C.J. Anderson in the backfield, Demaryius Thomas, Emmanuel Sanders at receiver, some decent pieces. I mean, you don't need to be a great quarterback to win with that team, and we've seen that with the struggling Peyton Manning. But they need to get more out of the position than what Trevor Siemian and Paxton Lynch have shown so far with the Denver Broncos the last couple of years. Year one, Siemian was a starter. The first year, Siemian was a starter. I mean, it looked like you may have somebody that you could work with, but this was a guy, 7th-round pick, didn't really do too much at Northwestern coming out of college. So, I mean, there's already questions about him. What did John Elway see in this guy to actually pull the trigger on him in the 7th round? Again, I don't know if there's another team in the league that would have at least drafted Siemian other than Denver. So, and yeah, I guess, John Elway, he's your general manager. He's a Hall of Fame quarterback. He's won Super Bowls. You're going to listen to what he has to say, and obviously he's the business or the ultimate decider in this draft business for the Denver Broncos, so he's going to do what he wants. And not, hey, you know what? 7th-round pick, Trevor Siemian, you've gotten a lot out of Trevor Siemian in looking at it that way. I mean, you don't get nearly as much out of the 7th-round pick, more times than not, than what the Broncos have gotten out of Trevor Siemian. But if you want to be a winning organization and you want to get back to your winning ways, I'm not saying you have to get the Peyton Manning of 2014, where he lit the world on fire, 55 touchdowns, an NFL record. That offense broke tons of records in NFL record books. But you need to get at least decent quarterback play, because what Trevor Siemian and Paxton Lynch showed this past season, it was not enough. It was not enough, and that's why the the Denver Broncos have the 5th? Is it the 5th pick? The 4th pick? They went 5-11 last year. I know that. I believe they have. It's one of those two. They have a top 5 pick, and the reason why is, well, it just didn't go their way this season. The quarterback struggled, which, if your quarterback's struggling, more times than not, your offense as a whole is going to struggle. The defense kind of took a hit this past season, didn't play as well as they were expected to, and a lot has to do with that being they're always on the damn field because the offense can't keep the ball. They're either turning it over or they're punting it away. 3 and outs, and your defense is tired, and they get to the bench and sit down to take a breather, and they're already being asked to run back out onto the field. You still have pieces though on that defense in Von Miller, Aqib Talib, Chris Harris Jr. You're going to get Shane Ray back next year. So the Broncos are a team that that we've seen before, where one year they're struggling, one year they win 5 games in a season, like they did this past year, and then next year, they could win the division. They could win the AFC West if they find the right signal caller, if they find the right guy to go under center. Whether it's a rookie, whether it is this Josh Allen or Baker Mayfield or Sam Darnold, Josh Rosen, whatever, or it's a veteran. Maybe it is a Kirk Cousins. Maybe they find a way to get Kirk Cousins to Denver. Von Miller's been on record saying, he's not necessarily recruiting Kirk Cousins, but he's talked to Kirk Cousins, and Kirk knows how Von Miller feels about him. So Von Miller would be more than happy to have a Kirk Cousins under center. He knows that they just need competent quarterback play there in Denver for them to be successful, and they did not get that this past year. And it's a big reason why that team struggled as a whole. Again, I'm Chris Shanfield. You guys are tuned into the CS Podcast, talking some NFL. But yeah, to get back to the point, the Chiefs did not want to send Alex Smith to the Denver Broncos. Chief CEO didn't want to trade Alex Smith to the Broncos. Instead, they get a deal done with Washington, and now Washington, they have Alex Smith, and again, minutes after that trade went down, they work out a deal where Alex Smith signed a 4-year, $92 million deal, I believe it was, somewhere around there, with about $71 million guaranteed. Now you got Alex Smith under contract. What do you do with Kirk Cousins? There's some rumors, and you might be asking yourself, what do you mean, what do you do with Kirk Cousins? He's a free agent. Well, there are some rumors that the Washington Redskins may actually franchise tag Kirk Cousins, which will give him, I think he'll be then under or due 33 or somewhere 30-something million dollars. Great reporting, right? I think $33 million for the one season. And then they look to trade him because he's not going to be playing over Alex Smith. Are you really going to pay a backup quarterback $33 million for one season? No. So there's speculation out there that the Washington Redskins may franchise tag Kirk Cousins so he doesn't really get to choose where he can go or where he'd like to go, but instead the Washington Redskins would franchise tag him and get something for him. What would you get for Kirk Cousins? I don't know. I'm sure there's a team out there that's willing to trade a first-round pick for Kirk Cousins. I don't have any doubt about it. I mean, Alex Smith, Washington just traded a second-round pick. A third-round pick and Kendall Fuller for Alex Smith. So I'm pretty sure you could get a first-round pick for Kirk Cousins. Now, you'll be getting that you'll have to be paying him a lot under that first year, $33 million. And when you do trade for him, of course you're not only trading for him for that season, but you're going to look to extend him as well. So then you're going to have to take your paycheck book back out, and sign him to an extension, probably a 4 or 5 year deal, over $100 million deal. How much guaranteed? I don't know. I'm sure he's going to want at least more than what Alex Smith just got in Washington, and rightfully so. He'll probably look for somewhere 85 million guaranteed, I gotta think. So we'll see. We'll see what goes on. I gotta think the Washington Redskins, if they do this, though, I mean, this is a black eye to their organization in terms of how free agents are going to look at them. I mean, they've already have a few black eyes from how they treat a few of their former players. Albert Hainsworth first comes to mind. Now, obviously, he got paid very handsomely there in Washington, but they have this reputation where they don't necessarily treat their players too well, and it kind of shows right now with how they've been dealing with this Kirk Cousins situation. He's been ready to leave for a couple of years now, and and this part I don't think is bad business. They've been making him stick because they don't think there wasn't anybody out there that they felt that they could get that would be better than a Kirk Cousins, and they didn't want to sign him to a long-term deal because they just didn't know exactly what kind of quarterback he was and is and can be. And I still think there's a question out there about what Kirk Cousins can ultimately be and what he is now if you surround him with the pieces. Now, he did have a decent offense there in Washington. Robert Kelly, Chris Thompson, Terrell Pryor, they signed in free agency. He was kind of a bust signing, though. Didn't really do too much this past season. They drafted the receiver out of TCU a couple years ago. He can't stay healthy. Jordan Reed, tight end, he can't stay healthy. Vernon Davis they acquired a couple years back, and this past season he was actually a pretty reliable target, pretty good target for that Washington Redskins offense. But if you were, and I've been on record in saying this, if you were to put Alex Smith on the Washington Redskins offense that Kirk Cousins worked with, and put Kirk Cousins on the Kansas City Chiefs offense that Alex Smith worked with this past season, I think Kirk Cousins would probably be the better quarterback. He's going to give you more turnovers. He's more of a risky thrower. He'll throw it down the field more. And Alex Smith actually did that a lot more this past season than he did in years past as well, throwing it down the field. Kind of got rid of that dink and dunk mentality that he's had for quite a while. But I think Kirk Cousins, and again, he's 4 years younger than Alex Smith. So I think there's a lot to work with Kirk Cousins. Is he a top 10 quarterback? I don't think so. No, absolutely not. Not right now. Is he a top 15? Yes. But can he be a top 10? I still don't know. I don't know. The jury's still out on Kirk Cousins. I don't necessarily know what he can turn into. But again, there's talk that Washington could franchise tag him and try and get something for him via trade. But I don't know how that's all going to work out. I do think Kirk Cousins, he's been on record saying his number one destination, he'd like to play with the Minnesota Vikings. He's a Midwest guy. He'd like to return to the Midwest, and obviously the Minnesota Vikings are ready to win right now. They do not have a quarterback under contract right now. The three quarterbacks that were the topic of discussion all season long, Case Keenum, who was their main starter and helped lead them through helped give them a nice run into the playoffs. He's a free agent. A lot of speculation whether or not he may follow Pat Shurmur. He's in New York, but there's a lot of question when Pat Shurmur was still under contract with the Minnesota Vikings, and his name was floating around a lot with the Arizona Cardinals. There's a lot of speculation maybe Case Keenum could follow him there. Now, obviously, Arizona, they also don't have a quarterback under a contract. Carson Palmer, retired, and all that. Again, we have our next guest. I'm sorry, pushing up on the clock. Didn't even notice it. Natrell Jamerson, Wisconsin safety, 2018 NFL draft prospect. He joins us next. You guys are tuned into the CS Podcast. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the CS Podcast. I am your host, Chris Shanafelt. Excuse me. Earlier in the show, we talked Indianapolis Colts with George Bremer, the Indianapolis Colts beat writer for the Herald Bulletin. Talked about the whole head coaching vacancy that is going on down there with the Indianapolis Colts and the whole Josh McDaniels fiasco going on down there. And now we welcome onto our show our next guest. He's 2018 NFL draft prospect. He was the defensive MVP at the 93rd annual East-West Shrine Game. Safety out of Wisconsin. He's Natrell Jamerson. And Natrell, really appreciate you taking some time this morning. How's everything going?
Thank you for having me. Everything is going good. I'm taking a break right now before I get back right to working out.
You know, Natrell, yesterday was National Signing Letter of the Intent Day, or whatever they call it. Anyways, yesterday a lot of high school kids, a lot of high school seniors made their official announcement as to where they'll be going to college at and furthering their football playing career at that university, at that college of their choice. Talk about your experience coming out of high school. How did you ultimately land at the University of Wisconsin, and what was that day kind of like for you when you made it official, when you found out that you're officially going to be a Wisconsin Badger?
It was a great day. I remember as soon as I signed the paper, now I did at my high school in the cafeteria. I put my family out there with me, and it was just a great feeling, just knowing that it's all signed. It's all signed. That's all I got to do is just go there now. Then once I got on campus, it was great. It was just how I expected. It was my years at college. It was great. Every year it was a new experience.
So you're from Florida, and you make the trip to the Midwest, to Wisconsin, to the University of Wisconsin, Madison, Wisconsin. And you show up, and they have you at receiver at first, and then you eventually go to the defensive side of the ball. Why did they make that change to the defensive side of the ball? Normally they say receiver or defensive backs are receivers that can't catch the football. Was that the case with you, Natrell?
No, man, I can catch. My hands are great. After my freshman year playing that receiver, I didn't get as much playing time as I should have. So our defense coordinator at the time, Coach Aranda, he called me up in the spring of my freshman year and asked how would I feel about switching. I was already considering switching anyway. He just beat me to the punch and asking me, so I'll go from there.
All right, great. Well, you had a breakout season, obviously, as a senior, Natrell. I mean, what was it like playing the safety position? And, again, you had, I believe, 51 tackles, a couple interceptions, 12 pass deflections. I mean, do you feel it helped you at all playing the safety position, seeing as you do have a past of playing wide receiver, knowing the wide receiver side of things, and then switching up and playing defensive back? Did that help you at all throughout your college career?
Yeah, it did actually. It was. I would say more of when I played corner. It helped me more because just coming from receiver, I know like when the receiver starts to like think himself or something like that, he's gonna slow down or stop. So I mean, just carrying things over that I learned that receiver. They carried over when I was playing defense a lot. Just reading the receiver's body language and things like that. It carried over big time.
Well, you've been coached by a former NFL safety that did a great job in the league for a very long time, and Jim Leonard. He's the defensive backs coach as well as the defensive coordinator there for the University of Wisconsin. What was it like kind of playing in a defense under him? And again, seeing as you play that safety position, I mean, what were some of the things that he's kind of been able to help you with as you still kind of continue to learn this position?
Mm-hmm. Coach Leonard, he's a great coach, from safety corner to whatever defense position, he's got some tips for you. But during the season and even in the spring before the season, he helped me a lot because, that spring was my first transition to safety. So a lot of it was new to me. I knew the defense, things like that, but as far as, like safety techniques, all that was new. And, he helped me with it a lot, Every question I had, he had an answer for it. He basically told me just to trust myself because he saw that I had the ability to do it. It was just, at the beginning, I would kind of like second guess myself or something like that. But he saw it in me that, he saw it in me that I know what I'm doing, that I know what to expect. And I was just trust myself.
This season for the Wisconsin Badgers, Natrell, I mean, it was a great one for you guys. You guys finished the regular season 12-0. A lot of people weren't very sure if you guys were the real deal or not, and then you guys go into the Big Ten championship game, take on Ohio State. Unfortunately, you guys lost in a nail-biter 27-21, but then you guys were able to play in the Orange Bowl against the University of Miami, another team that was very hot this season. I'm sure you guys would have liked, or I'm sure you would have liked to have finished the season, raising the national championship trophy, but if you were to write it any other way, I'm sure you really couldn't have, getting a victory against Miami in the Orange Bowl. Again, I'm sure the number one goal, and I know the number one goal for you guys, was to win the national championship and kind of prove everybody wrong, even though you guys had one of the top defenses in the nation and were one of the top teams in the country all throughout the season. But I got to think this is a pretty good I hate to say second place prize, but knowing that the number one goal is the national championship game, to still walk away with an Orange Bowl victory against a team like the Miami Hurricanes, I got to think, you still look back at the senior season of yours as a success.
Yeah, of course. That whole season, it was so much fun just playing with my teammates and, traveling to every game, just even, just the vibe in the hotels before the game. We all having fun. When the game comes around, we lock in, have fun on the field as well. So, I really couldn't ask for a better season, than what I had, especially my teammates. They did a great job of making sure that they send the scenes out the right way. And, we feel like they did, and hope they keep it up next year and the years to come.
And that didn't stop your collegiate career did not stop there, Natrell. You actually participated in, as I said in the opening, the 93rd annual East-West Shrine Game. You had a pick six in the game itself. I was there in person throughout the week at St. Pete, and I thought you were hands down one of the top defenders there. And to see it kind of work out for you in the game, you get the pick six, you're named defensive MVP. What was that whole experience like for you to kind of be around NFL coaches, be coached by some guys that are in the league and have experience in the league, and again, just overall experience that weekend? What was it like to wrap it up by winning defensive MVP?
That whole week was great. We started off with a visit to the Children's Hospital. That kind of set off right there. Just a smile on the kids' faces, just brighten up their day, just being around us. And I think that was one of the best events there. And then during the practice and talking to the coaches and all the NFL scouts that were there, it was great. Especially that was really my first time really sitting down and talking with scouts and seeing how they talk and things like that. And then with the NFL coaches, they're great. The coach that we had, they're all awesome. During the week of practice, we would have fun. It was like we had to be so serious and, just lock in every minute of the day. But, the coach, they did a good job of teaching us new things and how they expect things to go in the NFL, especially because that's where we want to be at. Like I said, all that was great. Then in the game, it was just as fun. Then capping it off with the fumble recovery for, I think it was like 70 yards, something like that. That was great. Before the game, even all week, our defensive coordinator coach, he told me that, you're gonna give me a touchdown in the game, and I told him I'm gonna give it to him. So, as soon as that happened, I got back to the sideline. We bumped chests in the air, because he said it was gonna happen, and it did. So, the whole week was a great experience.
That's right. It was not a pick six. It was a fumble return for a touchdown. It was a strip sack. You picked it up and you ran it all the way. And your defensive coordinator, Natrell, we're out here in Chicago. Your defensive coordinator was Chris Harris, the former Chicago Bears safety. Played a lot of seasons in the NFL. And personally, one of my all-time favorite players. I know a lot of people will probably say, Chris Harris, how's he one of your all-time favorite players? Well, he was a hard-hitting safety. I love the physicality that he brought to the game week in and week out. It was unlike any other. I'm a big fan of his. If you see our studio, Natrell, I actually have a picture of him. It's an interception in the Super Bowl, all over Marvin Harrison here. But what was that experience like, learning from Chris Harris, a guy that's done it at the next level for many years and had a lot of success doing it?
It was great. He's a great guy. He started every meeting off, playing music just to get our energy going. Then on the field, he coached us up. That's as good as you can ask for. And any little tip that he gave me, I took it all to the head, and I applied it every day. He's a great coach.
Again, we're chatting with Natrell Jamerson, a 2018 NFL draft prospect, safety out of the University of Wisconsin, in 2018 Shrine Game defensive MVP. And Natrell, when did it kind of hit you that you had a legit shot at furthering your football career and that you were going to give this whole professional football thing a shot? I mean, the University of Wisconsin, I mean, year in and year out, this university is flushing talent to the next level. I gotta think it's always been a dream. When did it hit you that you had a real shot at doing this thing?
No, I always say that. I always felt like I can go to NFL. But I think reality really hit home. Probably the spring of my junior year going to my senior year. When I made the switch, it was a confidence thing. Just talking with Coach Leonard and some of the coaches that I don't say that there was some safeties in the NFL that that can't get from sidelines the way I can, things like that. So it was just a lot of confidence. So I always felt like I could play in the NFL, but the closer it gets, the more real it feels.
And Natrell, for those who may not be too familiar with your game, what would you say is your biggest strength? If an NFL scout or somebody's watching your film, I mean, what's going to jump out at them right away when it comes to your game?
I would say my speed. No matter who we're playing, I'm going to be the fastest, if not one of the fastest on the field. So I mean, my speed that stick out more. That'll stick out.
And when it comes to your speed, I mean, you got a couple of different opportunities coming up. You were one of the guys, the prospects that were invited to the NFL Combine later on this month in Indianapolis. Obviously, the Wisconsin Pro Day is going to have probably all 32 NFL teams in attendance there as well. So you're going to have an opportunity to kind of showcase your speed. I hate to kind of put you on the spot, Natrell, but what are you thinking when it comes to your 40 time? I mean, what kind of number are you looking to hit?
I feel like I have to run a 4.3. I can't give you exact like 4.32 or 4.34 whatever, but it's definitely gonna be in the 4.3, low 4.4 range.
Okay. Hey, a lot of guys don't like to answer that question, so I give you a ton of credit for even stepping up to the table and giving us that prediction. Obviously, a 4.3 will do you very well and will obviously help your draft stock. Excuse me. I'm going to put you on the spot again, Natrell. I hear you're a gym rat. I hear you like to lift weights. What about the bench press, man? 225 pounds. How many reps you giving?
I mean, I feel like I can get close to 30, 30, in January, I hit it for 20 times, and that was kind of easy. So, I mean, with the 225, I'm not worried about that at all. It's probably going to open a lot of eyes. You look at me, you probably wouldn't think that I can lift that much, but, my max on the bench was 4 or 5, so 225, I'm here at least in the high 20s.
All right, I love it. Hey, a couple more questions for you, Natrell, then we'll let you go. Appreciate your time. You had an opportunity to meet with NFL teams and NFL scouts at the East-West Shrine Game. You got a couple more opportunities, as we mentioned, at the NFL Combine and at the Wisconsin Pro Day. Do you have any idea how teams are kind of viewing you as of right now? What are some of the things they like about your game? And, how do you think the league views Natrell Jamerson as of right now, February 8th, 2018, a few weeks prior to the NFL Combine?
Talking to a lot of scouts, they love what I do in special teams. I take special teams very serious. Been playing special teams off, always I've been doing a pretty good job at it. So, they love that. And then, as far as defense, I know they see me as a safety and, like a nickel corner, that type of position. So, whatever they want to see me, that's what I'm going to do. So,
all right, and where is it that you're training at for your pro day? You said you're kind of taking a quick break right now in between training sessions. Where are you training at for your pro day, and what is the regimen kind of looking like for you? What does your average day of training for your pro day for the Combine look like for you?
Yeah, so I'm down here in Tampa at ASPI with Yo Murphy. A typical day like today, this morning we did a lot of lateral stuff, working on explosiveness and drive down the field. And in about an hour or so, we're gonna do a lower body lift. So we got like two workout sessions a day. Then eat in between.
Okay, and obviously now, all the eyes are going to be turned to you as, what kind of track athlete are you? Again, we already talked about it. How fast can you run a 40? How high can you jump? How many reps of 225 can you pump out? A lot of attention is going to be paid to these pro day and combine numbers that you have. Were you pretty excited? What was your reaction when you found out that you did officially get an NFL Combine invite?
Yeah, I was geek. I got it because the lady texted me right when I was done working out, so I checked my phone and she told me who she was and why she was. So I called as soon as I saw it. She told me that was my official invite to the Combine, and she sent me some more stuff in the email, and I just sat down for a minute because like I said, it's getting more real. These things I dreamed of. Just watching the Combine all these years before on TV, just thinking like, what would I do when I get there, things like that. And it's real now. A few weeks away now. I'm so excited for it.
Yeah, man. Again, hitting that home run stretch here in the draft process, where, like you said, things are really starting to get serious now. And final question for you, Natrell. Really appreciate your time. Again, he's a safety out of Wisconsin, East-West Shrine Game defensive MVP. Natrell, let's say we have all 32 NFL general managers. They're tuned into this very show. Why should they want the safety out of Wisconsin, Natrell Jamerson, a part of their organization?
I would say that I'm a good football player, but even better person. I love people, doing things in the community. And as far as football wise, I'm an all-in guy. Whatever the coach asks, I'm gonna do it. No questions asked. No matter what position. If I never played, I'm gonna learn it to the best of my ability, and I'm gonna play to the best of my ability. So, they're gonna draft a great football player, but even better person.
Hey, absolutely. Well, Natrell, I had the pleasure of, again, being down there in St. Pete, watching you in person, and, again, seeing you win the defensive MVP. That was a lot of fun. Congratulations on a stellar collegiate career. Again, beginning on the offensive side of the ball and finishing up as one of the top safeties in all of the nation. And here you are now, 2018 NFL draft prospect, looking to make your dream a reality. Wishing you all the best, man. Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you.
There he goes, Natrell Jamerson, the safety out of the University of Wisconsin. Special thanks to him for taking the time and chatting with us here. Again, 2018 East-West Shrine Game defensive MVP. For whatever reason, I was saying pick six. He did not get the interception for a touchdown, but he did scoop up a fumble and returned it 60-some-odd yards for a touchdown. Returned it quite a bit and was out of there and raced to the touchdown and won the defensive MVP award in that game. stellar career at the University of Wisconsin, being coached under Jim Leonard, who's the Wisconsin Badgers defensive coordinator, former NFL safety. He's also Wisconsin's defensive backs coach, as you would imagine. And, he's a guy that spent a lot of time in the league, had a lot of success, never did anything too pretty or wasn't a guy that was always talked about as being the league's top safety. No, but if you wanted consistency and a very solid player, Jim Leonard was that. He was a starting safety for the New York Jets, was a special team standout, one of the top special teamers in all of the NFL. And Natrell mentioned, not only is he a heck of a defensive player, but he loves special teams, and he loves making an impact on that side of the ball as well. So special thanks to Natrell Jamerson for joining the program, as well as George Bremer, who joined the show earlier, a little over an hour ago, to talk Indianapolis Colts. George Bremer of the Herald Bulletin. Give him a follow on Twitter at GM Bremer. You guys can follow me on Twitter at Chris Shanafel. Go ahead and check out the NFL Draft Bible as well, NFLDraftBible.com and at NFL Draft Bible on Twitter. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you all enjoyed.